So with that in mind, why don't we start with biggest overachieving team? And why don't you kick us off with what your pick is?
Are you not telling anybody what the categories that we're going to talk about for our awards are?
That's the second. Did you listen to anything I said?
You don't like it, huh? You don't like how that feels. Yeah, welcome to my world.
No, I'm just trying to copy your lines.
Yeah, good.
That'll be second half.
Yeah,
Because if I say it now, you're not going to remember.
I don't remember anything you say anyway.
Now you sound like me.
What? Um, so there are a couple ones here. I've got like a West and an East and then an honorable mention, but I've gone into detail on like my number one. So for me, based on my preseason predictions, I was like, oh, Inter Miami's going to be terrible. Toronto's going to be terrible. And they've both been pretty good. But for me, I'm going to Minnesota, our best friends of the pod. So headed into the season, no head coach. Their star player played like 4 minutes before he went on some hiatus to Argentina, then got sold. Really didn't make a ton of offseason moves. A couple midfielders, a center back who really hasn't played much either, and they're fourth in the standings. They're top 10 supporter shield. They've got 4 away wins on the year. Very, very impressive out of Eric Ramsey and his team to come in and really set a tone from the start. I do have a shout out for some players, but I'll save that for the breakout player section. But that is my like number one overall team. I don't know if you want me to go through my other like honorable mentions, but I figured I'd stop. I'd let you give yours, and then we talk about some that maybe weren't covered.
Yep, that works. I won't lie. When you first said Minnesota, my first reaction was, what is he talking about? But then when you kind of summarized that whole, like, everything going on during the season and the off season, I was like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. I think that's a really good pick, considering like no head coach like right before the start of the season, and then all the Reynoso stuff that's been going on. Yet, like you said, they've still been really competitive. It's really going to be a question about the second half of the season because I feel like they've been doing this for the past few years, where they start off really good and then they fall off a bit. So we'll see if they can keep the momentum.
It's
I
usually the other way around, isn't it? Isn't it usually like they start slow and then they find some random midseason signing to bring them to the top?
I thought last season they were like red hot at the start and then they fell to 11th.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'm thinking of a different team.
All right, so for me, mine is probably not going to be a lot of other people's overachieving team. Mine was kind of based on where had seen this team at the start of the year. I had pretty low expectations for them, mainly for what I thought was going to be a defensive mess for them. But I've gone with the LA Galaxy.
Ooh.
I did not have high expectations for them, mainly because I thought that the back line was going to be a disaster. We talked a ton about how like aging that back line was, or sorry, I guess really just the center back spot and some new faces coming into the back line as well. There was just so many question marks. Really didn't feel confident about it. And while there have been moments in the season where the back line hasn't looked super assured, they've overall, I think, done a pretty decent job, at least enough that they're sitting third in the West right now. So clearly the defense has done a good job with working with the pieces that they have, and they've been a very solid defensive team. And I think the attack has even surprised me as well. Like I think I had some expectation that it was going to be good. I didn't expect it to be this good. Like they have 37 goal score, which is second in the West behind RSL, and they have looked so exciting to watch. When Paintsil, Peck, Puj, and Jovic is all healthy and on the field, that attack is unstoppable. And if you tack on the fact that if they somehow landed Marco Royce on top of that, I know we talked about that in past episodes, that's a disgusting attack. That's top attack in the league, probably. So I think in both defense and offense, they've outdone my expectations, and certainly in the standings, I had them like 12th. So for them to be third, they're very much overdoing what I had expected for them.
So I agree. I think that's a decent shout. I think we both had them low because of that defensive nightmare that we thought was going to happen, and I think you can kind of say they haven't been great. But I think the question we always asked was, um, does the attack actually their defense has been better than I imagined.
That's what I thought too. I thought like, oh, I think the defense has been a lot better in recent weeks because I think at
Mhm.
the start of the season they were more shaky.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, really, you think about it, right? When you look at other teams that have 27 goals conceded, for the most part, outside of Minnesota, they are, you know, a lot lower than that. I mean, Colorado and Portland are a bit higher too, but those teams are the St. Louis, the KCs, the San Jose's. I mean, the Austins. They're lower. You usually expect that to happen, but you only are allowed to give those up and be successful if you've got really good attack. And that was the question: was do they have enough in the attack to make up for what we thought was going to be a not so great defensive side? And clearly the answer is yes. And one of the people who disagreed with our take when we made that original take, he said the other thing that you got to consider is that when you have an attack that has the ball a lot and is in the attacking end, your defense doesn't have to do that much anyway, which is, I think, one of the things that you're seeing here is they're doing so much in the attack that there's not as much pressure as you would expect on that back line. So, yeah, good shout. If I had to pick somebody from the other conference, which I did, I think it's pretty easily Charlotte, brand new coach, all D3P, all three designated players gone to start the year. Really haven't brought in much else at the moment. I mean, they had Lyle Abada come in, but outside of that, not really too much. You know, it's a very defensively sound team. They've done really, really well. They're strong at home. They're tough to beat. It's been impressive so far from Charlotte, who I think we both had kind of not being as great as they are right now.
All right. I figured you were going to say it, which is why I went with the Galaxy. But let's just say it. Toronto FC is easily overachieving our what our expectations were. I believe somebody on the podcast, not me, had called them the worst team in MLS history before the start of the season, and
So,
they're in the
so
playoffs right now.
to my defense, that statement was caveated with.
We don't care about your caveats.
I know you don't care because you need content because all you care about is pissing off everybody in the world, apparently.
Yeah, that's what gets clicks.
It was caveated with the idea that Insigne and Bernadeschi were gone. That was where that statement came from, is Bernadeschi's gone, Insigne's gone. They brought in one defensive midfielder. Deba Flores has been okay. If both of those were gone, this team is a nightmare. And realistically, they have been, right? How many goals have Insigne and Bernadeschi scored together?
I don't know if Insigne's done much. I feel like he's always been injured, but Bernadeschi's been cooking this season.
I'll double check for
But
you.
he's also kind of playing as a wing back, isn't he?
Doesn't matter.
Bernadeschi's got 12 goal contributions.
Yeah, so Bernadeschi, 12 goal contributions. Insigne, yeah, 6. So you're looking at 18 goal contributions compared to the 28 goals they've scored. I mean, they've played a huge part in what the team has done, right? Now, I'm not saying that somebody wouldn't have come in and stepped up in those roles, but when you think about it, they've put more of an emphasis. You know, they're more than half of the goal contributions that they've had. You take those away, and you're looking at a team that's not so very good. So that's all that was. And I do think we need to give a shout out to RSL as well. I think we're going to talk a lot about them over the next couple of sections here. But RSL have been out of their mind. I think they've been better than Minnesota and Charlotte and even LA. Obviously, they're at the top of the table. But I think they've also had a little bit more to work with, right? A stronger back line, a better midfield work, and then that attack is dangerous. So,
yeah, the last team I'll give a shout out to, because I know you won't, is NYCFC, who
absolutely
are
not.
absolutely overachieving our expectations for them at the start of the year. I think I had them 12th. They're fourth. And I imagine that you were in a very similar boat. So, all right. So I think we covered the overachieving teams pretty well. Let's move on to the underachieving teams. And since you started the last one, I'm starting this one.
Didn't ask.
Well, guess what? I'm in charge, so I don't care what you ask for. I'm going with Orlando. Is it because
Who's in charge? Who's in charge?
I'm in charge for this episode?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Who's in charge?
You said that. It's in the recording. Actually, it's probably not in the recording, but
yeah, once I cut it out.
All right. I am going with Orlando. And is this because I'm an Atlanta fan? Partially. Is it because they're massively underachieving? I'm sure even 99% of Orlando fans would agree with that. I thought they were winning the Supporter Shield this season, and they have looked like anything but that team. They are currently 14th in the East, and probably on their way to being 15th in the East, even behind New England, who has 2 games in hand and is only 2 points behind. This team has been in a lot of trouble this season. They have not been able to get things to click like they have in past seasons, and they have massively underachieved the expectations that I'm sure many people had for them. They were already a strong team. It looked like they added really good reinforcements to the team in this winter transfer window, and yet after all of that, they're sitting 14th in the East. It has been a very disappointing season for them so far. I don't even know if I see like I mean it's MLS, so obviously like every single team in this league is still within a shot at the playoffs, but this team does not look like it's headed in any direction to potentially even make the playoffs.
Yeah, that was. I mean, there are a lot of really good ones, right? I think you mentioned New England, Philly. I think also stands out in that group. We talked about Jim Curtin, and maybe even we'll talk about him in the future about if his seat's getting hot right now. But I agree. I think Orlando takes a cake here. They got a great. They started off with a great base of players. They added Luis Muriel up top. They added Ladero in the midfield. Held on to Duncan McGuire for half a year. Added Bracalo in the back for depth. Still had Pedro Gallese in the goal, and they've got 4 wins in 18 games. Like that is a nightmare. If I had to add another one from the West, I think FC Dallas is a pretty good one there. I think we both picked them pretty high in the West. Second place for me, I know at least. At least they added a $12 million striker. They had a good base of attacking players to start off the year. The defensive team was all right. Paez very good in goal. 5 wins and are woeful on the road. And I get it; they've been hurt, they've had injuries, no doubt. But this is a team, and we talked about it when Nico Estevez got let go. This is a team on paper that should at least be in the 5, 6, 7 range. Being out of the playoffs right now is not acceptable for that team.
Yeah. I think, like you said, though, once they start getting healthy and start playing a bit more together, I do think they will climb up the table. I feel like they've been better in recent weeks and they're starting to get a little bit of momentum going. So we'll see. That will probably not stay the same by the end of the season, but definitely have not helped where we had them originally at the start of the season. If
No, we don't look very good with that one. I've still got people popping up on the YouTube short of our predictions and then being like, "You don't know what you're talking about. Orlando's garbage." Like, thanks, buddy. We're 18 weeks into the season. That was made like 4 months ago. Yeah.
if I had to pick a West team as well, I will go with St. Louis. First in the West last season. I know we weren't expecting them to go first in the West again, but I do think we still had them probably top five in the West. I can't remember where yours was. I
I
think I
had a
had
one
them
four.
four. Yeah, okay. So we both had them at four. They're sitting 12th right now. They're far off of it. They don't look nearly like the same team as last season. And even that, remember that fluke Colorado team that won the West? Even the season after that for them, they still finished 10th. So St. Louis right now is on pace to be even a worse defense of the Western Conference title than that Colorado team. So not looking so great for them right now.